Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. Stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, episode number 225, presented by Marshall Communications, creator of the Marshall Plan Strategic Process. For those of you new to the show, I'm your host, Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. And today I feel like we have a very distinguished guest because I watch News Center Maine pretty much like all day, every day. I have it
all day, every day.
I have it on in the background while
Bless
I'm
you.
working.
We could use 100,000 more like you.
Well, I don't know.
We could.
I sometimes will tweet things to people. I don't know if I tweet to you, but I sometimes live tweet like to Hannah Yeshivi, and I do enjoy doing that. Anyway, I'm supposed to be introducing you.
Sorry, I'm already disrupting the flow.
No. So this is Rob Caldwell, who's been an anchor and reporter at News Center Maine for many years. We're gonna get into that in a moment. But welcome, Rob. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, Nancy.
Yeah. So Rob Caldwell is an anchor and reporter for the NBC television station in Maine, WCSH in Portland, and WLBZ in Bangor. He's done thousands of interviews, and it's a little bit daunting, I have to say, to be interviewing him, but we'll see how I do. But over the 41-year career, you couldn't be old enough for that.
The numbers don't lie. I sometimes try to stretch the truth, but the numbers don't lie.
Yeah, well, my career is nearing that as well, so we just might as well be proud that we're still ticking. We're still relevant.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I'm still working.
Yes, and relevant, yes. And you've received many honors and accolades that include the regional Emmys and the National Edward R. Murrow Award. So since 2003, he has been co-anchor of 207, which is one of my favorite shows, and I'm not just saying that, but I do love 207. It's a news magazine show that airs weeknights at 7 p.m., and in 2015, he was inducted into the Maine Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So, Rob, tell us about your career and how you got into it in the first place.
How many days do we have? I am one of those people who had no plans to get into broadcasting or to get into journalism, and it was a matter of good fortune that I ended up in this line of work. I got out of college and I had no idea what I wanted to do. None. And I came back home with kind of my tail tucked between my legs.
Home was where?
Home was in Yarmouth. And my first job after 4 years of college was driving a cab for Town Taxi in Portland. And I did that for about 3 hours and realized this is not the career that I'm interested in pursuing. I had some nasty encounters in just that short time, including another cab driver who reached under his seat, picked up a tire iron and showed it to me and said, "You really need one of these."
Oh, gosh.
And then another one who told me that if I really wanted to make money, I needed to be able to tell guys who got in the cab and asked for a prostitute where they could find one.
Oh, no.
And so I decided, no, that's not for me. So then my next job was a step up, and I was a bellhop at an inn in Yarmouth. And I just did that for a few months until it closed at the end of the foliage season. And then I got a break, and I became an intern at a radio station in Portland, WYNZ AM and FM. Unpaid intern, but I got to hang out in the newsroom. And it was a really good small market radio news operation with some talented people who were kind enough to show me how things worked. I'd always been interested in news. I'd always been interested in current events. I'd always been fascinated by history. I liked writing. So I brought some of those elements with me, even though I didn't have the journalistic training. after working as an unpaid intern for a few months, they gave me a part-time job there and as a reporter. And I went and I covered Portland City Council meetings and planning board meetings and other exciting things like that. And then I'd been there almost a year, and I saw an ad in the Maine Sunday Telegram. WLBZ in Bangor was looking for a general assignment reporter. And I applied after seeing that ad, and I got hired at News Center, and that was just over 40 years ago.
And you moved to Bangor.
Moved to Bangor, worked for 2 years
Got
at
an apartment
WLBZ,
there.
got an apartment there, loved it. It was so much fun, interesting every day. I got to travel over around a part of Maine that I didn't know that well, Washington County, Piscataquis County, Aroostook, doing all kinds of stories. General assignment reporter, you never know what you're going to do. You could be talking to the governor one day, you could be talking to a lobsterman the next day, a logger the next day, a homeless person the next day. It was great. I loved it.
And then you were transferred to Portland from Bangor?
I applied for an opening down here, and I arrived at WCSH in November of 1984 after almost 2 years in Bangor. And this is where I've been ever since.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you're probably one of the longest running employees there now, or at least on-air people.
I'm now the longest on-air one since Pat Callahan retired.
Right.
Just about a month ago, I am now the longest on-air. I have the longest on-air run of anyone there. Although there are people behind the scenes, there are 3 directors in the production department who've all been there longer than I have.
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that I think I like the fact that there's not a lot of change there. I mean, for some reason that's comforting to me as a viewer. Although I have to say I do like the new people that come on.
Well, I think you need to have that mix. You need
Right.
to have some people who have the institutional memory and know, what was going on in Maine regarding whatever. Pick the issue.
Right.
Workers' compensation. Well, some of us remember when workers' compensation was a huge issue in Maine 25 years ago, and state governments came to a halt over a battle over workers' comp. And so if you're doing a story now on workers' comp, it can be helpful to have a little sense of history. Or if you're doing a story on lobstering, that can be helpful to know something about how lobstering regulations have gone over the years. So, but it's always good. It's always good to have fresh blood and to have new talented reporters who bring an energy and an enthusiasm and a different perspective and outlook. So you want to have the right kind of combination
Exactly.
of veterans and newer ones.
And it's probably interesting too to see how newer people find their stories too. I remember again when I worked at Sugarloaf in the 80s, and I used to drive video, a 3/4-inch video from ski races down and deliver it to the station. And Bill Green would make an exception and take the video because otherwise you guys didn't really take any footage from anybody
Right.
That you hadn't shot.
Well, I feel, honest to God, I look back and I can't believe it's like you'd think that I had started in an era when we were writing on parchment with quill pens or something. Because when I was working in Bangor, we used to put our tapes on the bus. We'd go to the bus station in downtown Bangor and put our edited tape on the bus. The bus would go to Portland, and then someone from WCSH would pick it up, take it to the station, and get it on the air. Or if it was something where we had to get it there fast, if it was a big story and worth the expense, we'd take it out to the airport and put it on a Bar Harbor Airlines flight to Portland, from Bangor to Portland.
Yeah.
And that's how we did it. And of course, nowadays, we can get video and images just like
Instantly,
that from
yeah.
viewers who are
Right.
right on the scene.
Exactly.
So
That's one of the big changes is, again, the station used to make such a big deal about how they wouldn't accept any video that wasn't shot. And then now when I see things that you guys are taking off of people's social media feeds.
Yeah, so if there's something dramatic that happened, if there's a snowstorm and there's a 42-car pileup on the turnpike or something,
Right.
well, the people who are there taking pictures or video with their phones have got these great images. And it's, if the accident happens 90 minutes away from us, they've got images that we can't get and they get them to us right away. And so
Right.
it's remarkable how much different things are.
I know. Yeah.
That's what happens when you stick around long enough.
I know. Well, again, you're talking about putting tapes on planes because, again, when we had a big snowstorm, I would be the one that had to drive the video to the Portland Jetport to put it on a plane to Atlanta for the Weather Channel. So we would fly video down.
Yeah.
And then they would air it. Yeah. And, we had meteorologists there that, they loved getting those snow shots from the state of Maine.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff.
Yeah. But getting back to how, some of the newer reporters, again, I can imagine they might not have the network. I mean, you have a very well-established network of contacts and news sources where they might not have that, but they might be looking at Twitter, for example, and getting their news from Twitter.
That's absolutely true. They are so much more savvy than I am with all social media platforms. So much more savvy. Basically, the cantaloupe that's on your kitchen counter at home right now is more savvy than I am when it comes to social media platforms. But it's indispensable, of course, that you have journalists who can use those tools to the fullest, and they can, and they're great at it. So I have to rely on my old wiles and old ways.
Well, I also know, one of the reasons you're here today is because I see you walking around Portland, and sometimes I'll honk my horn or I'll wave and yell out the window at you. And so you've literally got your nose to the ground on the sidewalk looking for stories.
I do. People stop me on the street pretty regularly, and they have an idea or a comment or something. In fact, I'll tell you about one good story that I got, I guess it was about a year ago. And I was just walking down Congress Street here in Portland, and a guy asked me if I'd ever been in the Mechanics Hall building.
Oh, yeah.
And that building dates back to before the Civil War, and it was built by craftsmen and artisans. And the idea was to create a library for these workers so that they could further their skills. Because public libraries at the time there were only maybe I think 20 or 30 in the entire U.S. public lending libraries. So if you wanted to learn on your own, teach yourself, then you had these trade libraries. And that's what the Mechanics Hall was built for, was the dissemination of knowledge. So it's this great building that they're trying to bring into the community more now. So the guy stopped me, gave me a little 2-minute pitch, said, would you be interested? And I said, well, let me come by and look at the building. I said, I've been in there once, but I haven't really gotten the full tour. I said, let me come in, get the tour, and then I'll decide if I want to do the story. So went in there, liked it, very interesting, did the story, came out well. It was a good story.
I saw it.
But that was a story that came about solely because I was walking down the street and a guy stopped me and said, hey, would you consider doing a story on?
Yeah, that's great. And it was a great story. And aren't they doing fundraising and trying to do more improvements?
That's part of the reason why they want to get some attention is because they need to do fundraising. Everyone in Maine knows how much it costs to keep up an old building. They've got the classic problems of a roof that leaks when the snow is melting and the freezing and the thawing. And everybody knows what these kinds of problems are. And it's an old building, but a beautiful building. And they're fixing it up.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. And that you were able to help them, that must feel good too.
Well, I got a good story out of it. That's my interest. I'm just looking for a good story, like the way a shark moving through the ocean is looking for its next meal.
So you're a master of interviewing, and I watch your interviews all the time and enjoy that. And so if you're giving advice to others, what advice would you give to our listeners of the PR Maven podcast on that, how they can become better at interviewing?
I think maybe the single most important thing is to have a genuine curiosity about whatever it is you're talking about with the person. And to have a curiosity about the person.
Right.
Not just the subject, but the person. So, yeah, if I were talking to you, I'd want to know about your business, but I'd also want to know about you. Where'd you grow up? Did you have brothers and sisters? What did your parents do? what were your favorite times as a kid? What were the worst times as a kid? And on and on.
As you said, how many days do we have? I'd be happy to tell you.
Yeah, so it's just that the curiosity, I think, is hugely important.
Right.
And it also, it puts people at ease and makes them want to tell you their story.
Right.
If you are truly interested in their
Exactly. And people can feel it, whether you're just doing your job or whether you truly are interested.
So that's a huge part. Another really important element, and this is not rocket science, none of this, but another really important element is simply preparation, to know something about the person you're interviewing and whatever it is you're going to be talking about.
Right.
And especially if it's something that is not in your wheelhouse, then you really have to do some more homework. So if I'm talking to someone, let's say that this year a professor from Maine won a major prize in chemistry, and he was in some specialized field in the world of chemistry that he or she had made a major breakthrough in. Well, I would need to do some preparation on that. I can't wing that. If I'm talking to the football coach at UMaine, I might be able to just wing that because I know a fair amount about football, but I'm not real good on my chemistry.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I took a chemistry class.
Right.
And I don't really have an interest in chemistry, which
Right.
is not to say that I couldn't have an interest in what this person is doing.
Right.
But preparation is important, and it shows often. It's a sign of respect to the person you talk to. If the person you're talking to can tell that you've done some homework, you've done some research, then they appreciate that, and it usually makes for a better conversation.
Right. Well, I remember because I handled the public relations for author Paul Dwarin, and I know that you would always have read the book when you were interviewing him about a new book, or at least you had skimmed it because you did know the story, and that did make for a much better interview.
Yeah, I talk to a lot of authors, and I don't have time to read all their books because there are weeks when I will interview 3 writers in 1 week, and they've all written a book. They haven't written an article; they've written a book, and I don't have time to read 3 books.
No,
I'm not a book reviewer. The station doesn't pay me to sit and read for 8 hours a day.
Right.
But I do always at least skim the book. I always try to read, say, the first chapter.
Right.
And after that, I'll try to maybe sort of speed read it.
Yeah.
And what I often do, a lot of the time, it's a shortcut that works pretty well, is if the book has come out and been reviewed, especially if it's been reviewed in the major publications, that's great. That's the best.
Oh, yeah.
And then, so that way I can, in a relatively short amount of time, get a pretty good sense of what a book is about without having read the whole.
Right. Yes.
But it makes for a better interview. Makes a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it would take a lot of time to read 3 books in a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how can PR people best pitch you story ideas without irritating you or overwhelming you? What do you look for to pitch?
A good story.
Right.
The guy who was the creator of 60 Minutes and who was its executive producer for, I forget, 35 years, Don Hewitt was his name, and he was a true television genius. I don't use the term lightly. Don truly understood television. 60 Minutes has been on the air for 50 plus years now. It was the #1 rated show on TV for something like, 20 plus years, and it still does very well in the ratings. Don was always asked, what's the secret to 60 Minutes? What's the secret to 60 Minutes? Why is it so successful? Why do people watch it? He said, it's very simple. 4 words, tell me a story. And that's what I want to hear in a pitch, or from anyone, whether it's a pitch from a PR professional
Right.
or from the person I meet on the street.
Right.
What's the story here? Why is this a story that people will want to hear?
Right.
I don't want to pitch if you're a PR person representing, restaurants in Maine.
Right.
Okay, that's good because most people go to restaurants at some time or other. But it's got to be broad. It can't be about, hey, I've got a story about a new fryolator that will reduce costs in restaurants by 5%. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in something that's got a broader appeal. So
Right.
a strong story, broad appeal to general viewers, everyday folks, and also good personalities always help. People always want to hear stories about people. So I'm looking for stories about people.
Right. And it's not your job to promote a certain business. I mean, I can imagine people will some publicists might think that it's your job to tell the story just to help the business, but
every day I get emails, I don't know how many, from these national PR firms, and I don't know how I got on their lists. But
yeah, you're in a database
lists.
or something.
And I actually should have grabbed a few for you, and they're just kind of insulting because, I mean, don't waste my time. This is something I wouldn't do in a million years. It's the great new easy clean floor waxing machine. This would be a great segment for your show. No, it wouldn't. Shut up. Don't waste my time.
Yeah, right.
Delete,
exactly.
delete.
I know.
But that's how on the national level. I think that's how they work. They can say to their clients, "Oh, I got 10,000 media outlets on my list, and I'm going to email every one of them, and we'll make something happen." Well, it's not happening with me.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I mean, they should do their homework. If they're a national publicist and approaching you, they should watch your show and have a local hook too, I would think.
I'll give you an example of one time when a PR person here in Maine reached out to me with a story that on paper would have been a no-go right from the start. And it was about a hospice where there are two musicians who played free of charge outside of the building in warm weather for the benefit of the hospice patients and the families and the staff.
Yeah.
And that's a tough sell for television because there's not a lot going on visually. They're just two musicians sitting around outside. We couldn't talk, obviously, to any of the patients, couldn't interview any of the patients.
Right.
And so I was not sure if we could make that work. And it just seemed like a tough story, maybe a better print story, but I decided to take a flyer on it, in part because I knew one of the musicians, and he's a good talker. So again, talkers are key. And we did the story, and it ended up coming out really, really well, and ended up winning a regional Emmy Award. And so that's one where, from an unlikely idea, that probably shouldn't have worked, ended up working really well. And that was a pitch from a PR firm.
And were you able to find someone who was dying who benefited from the music?
No. We had to work around that because no one who was in hospice was available to talk to us, which is understandable. They're all, they're within days, maybe a few weeks of coming to the end of their lives. They don't want to, talk to a TV reporter, and I don't want to intrude on them.
Right.
That was maybe even more important. I'm not going to intrude on them, but we were able to make it work.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we're going to hear more from Rob about your story, but first we're going to watch a little video about Sprague and Curtis in Augusta and how they read my book and how it helped them with their business. So we'll be right back in just a moment.
Sprague & Curtis is a locally owned real estate company. We're primarily focused in central Maine. I got excited about Nancy's book because she's so well known in the area for her marketing and branding techniques, and we're always looking to expand and learn and grow, and so a lot of us here at the office decided that we wanted to read her book and learn some new techniques.
It benefits Sprague & Curtis to have a large brand and audience because there can often be multiple years between transactions with clients, so it's important to network with them and stay in touch with them in those in-between periods. And this book really helped us learn some techniques and methods to continue to do that. We organized a small book group with Nancy's book with brokers in our office this winter to share information and remind ourselves how important it is to always be working on our network and continually reaching out to our customers.
Platforms like social media are important in expanding your business, but equally as important are handwritten notes, cards, letters. She inspired me to send her a note of appreciation, just thanking her for the book and her insight. In reading Nancy's book, I was excited to look to continue to grow our brand and our audience. I think she does a great job of motivating us.
Nancy's book really helped me learn a few things in marketing and branding and how important it is to stay on top of reaching out to clients periodically, staying top of mind, providing useful information, and really telling our story as a company.
So we're back with more with Rob Caldwell, and while we were watching that video, I was saying that I try to impress upon people that you need to use both old-fashioned and new-fashioned ways of connecting. So social media plus phone calls or letter writing. And Rob said he has a story to tell.
When you reached out to me, you did it with a handwritten note, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
In the mail.
And it works. That matters. I've told other reporters before that if you want to break through the clutter and really reach someone who's hard to get, who you know is going to be a tough person to get to talk, I've told them, send them a handwritten note. And I'll give you an example of a time when I was trying to get someone who lives in Maine who is fairly well known. I won't say who she was, but she's kind of a celebrity. And I couldn't get any contact information because she's quite private. But I didn't know what town she lived in. And so I just sent a handwritten note to so-and-so, the town. I didn't even have a street. And I just said to, it's a fairly small town. It's not
in Maine.
Yeah, it's in Maine. So that was all I said was the person's name and the town.
And did you even have the zip?
Yeah, I had the zip. I can figure out zip codes, Nancy. And she got back to me and did an interview, and it was great.
Oh, isn't that amazing?
So, yeah. I guess I could say who it was. It was Nina Blackwood, who was one of the original VJs on MTV.
Oh, wow.
And I knew that she lived in Maine because she used to go to a store where my then girlfriend, now wife, used to work. And my girlfriend said to me, Nina Blackwood comes in here. You want to do an interview with her? And so anyway, I ended up doing a story with her. But I couldn't get a phone number. I couldn't get an email. She wasn't on social media. Yeah. I just sent Nina Blackwood in the town.
Yeah.
Wrote it off, and I got it. And it was because of the handwritten note. The handwritten notes should not be underestimated.
Well, I know, and I tell a lot of young people, if you really want to be different, if you want to differentiate yourself, like if you have a job interview, send a handwritten note in the mail and you will be remembered for that. The
general manager for the radio station where I started working, where my career began, over the years, he sends people cartoons. He sees a funny cartoon in the New Yorker that relates to that person. So if he saw something that related to PR, he would cut that cartoon out and he would send it to you with about a 2-sentence handwritten note. Just, Nancy, thought you'd get a kick out of this. Good one, huh? Yeah. And he told me, and he would do that like every couple of years. He'd send you something or more often. And he told me a line that I've always remembered. He said, when I reach out to those people, and he would do this especially with prospective advertisers, he said, they don't always buy ads from me, but they always take my calls. Right, exactly. And I thought that was a great point. You establish that kind of a rapport, and people will always take your calls. Right. And keeping track of people's birthdays and sending a birthday card in the mail is another good technique for staying in touch. Yeah. Yeah. So how have people's television watching habits or how they're consuming television, how has that changed over the course of your career? I don't have any particular insights to offer. I think everybody pretty much knows what has happened. The media world has just splintered in ways that I never would have dreamed of. I mean, when I started, CNN had just begun. There were no other cable networks, and CNN wasn't a player back then. And everybody got their news, their broadcast TV news from ABC, CBS, and NBC, or the local affiliates of those networks. Right. And everybody read the newspaper every day. Right. Depending on where you lived. You read the Portland Press Herald, you read the Bangor Daily News, you read the Kennebec Journal, whatever. You read the local paper. And then quite possibly that's all you read. And now we all have a buffet that never stops. That's right. And it's got marvelous dishes on it, and it's got all kinds of crap on it. Right. But the media offerings are just endless now. So, of course, the audience has splintered, and the audience has shrunk. So we don't have as many people watching. We still have a good-sized audience. We still reach a lot of people, but it's not what it was before technology changed everything.
Right. And there weren't podcasts. I mean, who would have thought there'd be a podcast that could be live streaming on YouTube or
Yeah.
LinkedIn or Facebook?
Yeah, I mean, when I started, there were no podcasts. There was, of course, no satellite radio. There was no email.
Right.
There were no cell phones. We used to, when we were on the field, we had to find a payphone or ask someone if we were at somebody's house. We'd have to say, "Can I borrow your phone?" And it's an 800 number that I'm calling back to the newsroom, so you won't get a long distance charge for this.
Right.
And it just seems like another world. I just kind of wonder, how did that happen? But clearly it did.
I know. And how people raised children when they couldn't reach them on a cell phone. There's so many things.
Yeah, so many things. So many.
So how does News Center Maine use social media to promote its programming or its personalities? And do you use social media to promote your shows?
We've got a whole digital team that works on that. Obviously works, there are no hard walls, but there's a digital team that is really focused on the website and the app, News Center Maine website and app, and also then using Twitter, Facebook, whatever other platforms to just get our news out to people and to engage people. But everyone in the newsroom is involved in these kinds of things. Now, I am the exception. I am, to be honest, probably less involved in social media than anyone else in the building.
And you don't feel any pressure to become? Is your boss including that in your annual review?
Actually, he is.
I would think so.
Yeah. No, there's pressure, and I do a few things.
Yeah.
But not a lot.
Yeah, it is time consuming. I mean,
that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's a lot of it. There are more things to be done in the day, but of course, no more time in which to do them.
Right.
So nowadays, to just give you one example, every significant story I do has to have a web story that goes with it. Well, I've already put a lot of time into preparing the broadcast story, and writing for broadcast is different from writing for, I'll call it print. It's not print, but writing for digital.
Right.
And so I can't just take the story that I wrote for broadcast and just put that transcript on our website. It doesn't work. So stories have to be rewritten. It takes a fair amount of time. Maybe it takes 45 minutes. If I have to do 2 of those a day, it might take an hour and a half. That's an hour and a half out of my day that never used to be out of my day 25 years ago.
Right.
And of course, all these things add up, and there's just more to do. And of course, we're not allotted more time, or well, I mean, they might say, sure, just work 10 hours a day, work 11 hours a day.
Right.
But that's not really a good solution.
No, because you need to do your walks.
I got to get out and get my walking in.
Yeah. How many steps? Do you track your steps? Do you do?
No.
10?
Do I look like I would have one of that kind of technology? I don't have an Apple Watch. Good Lord, no. No, I don't have any of that stuff.
You just go for a walk.
I just go for a walk, and I pretty much know what the distances are.
Yeah.
So that when I walk from the newsroom to Monument Square to get a sandwich, I know that's about a quarter mile. So when I do the round trip is a half mile. So that's okay.
Yeah.
And if I walk down to get a haircut, I know that's a little more than a half mile. So that's about a mile and a quarter round trip. So I keep track of it. And I try to do at least 5 miles a day this time of year. More when the weather's good, more like 6 or 7 in the nicer months.
And we were just talking about weightlifting at the YMCA, and because you're doing a story on that tonight. But is that something you engage in, is weightlifting?
You've seen me walking in the morning to the gym.
Oh, okay.
I'm wearing my shorts. It's January and it's 14 degrees outside.
Right.
I'm wearing my shorts and I don't think you do it anymore, but probably the first couple of times you said, "Why are you wearing shorts in winter?"
Yeah.
And I say, "Well, I'm just going to the gym. It's only a 5-minute walk. I'm just going to the gym." So I do go to the gym just about every day.
I think when I see you, I'm going to Pure Barre, which is my class at 5:45 a.m. Yeah.
So this is one of the few skills I have in life, Nancy, is I can read while walking on a treadmill.
Oh, good.
So I got a bad back. I don't run.
Yeah.
I walk on the treadmill, and I can read. So I can read newspapers and magazines, which is a good way to get information.
And of course, you're not reading on a device. You're actually reading the paper
Correct.
version.
Correct.
Yeah. Good. Well, I mean, Lisa DeSisto is a friend of mine, the publisher of Maine Today and the Portland Press Herald, and she would say, keep reading that newspaper, Rob. And actually, the Press Herald and News Center Maine have a nice relationship.
There's a partnership between the two.
Yeah.
And so we help them out with some things. They help us out with some things, and it's a good arrangement.
That's good. You share a similar audience.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so now I love the News Center kitchen. We were talking earlier about Rory Strunk, and he has Maine Studios. So, what do you look for in a chef or a restaurant to feature? And do you eat all that food? It looks really good.
Let me answer the second question first.
Okay.
I usually don't eat the food on air. Why do I not eat the food on air? Because I always need to be talking. And unless I take a tiny little morsel, I can't be chewing whatever.
Getting spinach in your
talking
teeth.
with my mouth full and getting spinach in my teeth. And the other thing is I'm always worried about spilling something. I don't want to be eating a piece of blueberry pie, boom, have the blueberry go right onto my shirt. That's not a good look. So, and viewers have asked a lot over the years, and still do. Why don't you try the food more often? Why don't you try the food? And those are the main two reasons. Don't want to talk with my mouth full, don't want to spill. And the other thing is that, there's a third thing, is that I don't want to sort of be forced to every time say something nice.
Right, because you don't
Because
always...
then it just shreds my credibility. If every time I take a bite of something in the kitchen and I say, this is good, then people will say, rightly so, well, he's just a shill. He's just,
Right.
He's got to say that, or he thinks he has to say that. So, often I won't offer an opinion.
Right, because it might be terrible.
To be perfectly honest, I think there have been maybe no more than that, 5 times in 20 years, where the food wasn't good. But it's not that. It's not that, but it's just I don't want to always be saying,
Right. Oh, how delicious.
Wasn't this wonderful?
Yeah.
Because then you're just a phony.
Right.
I can't be doing that.
I had never thought of that. But on national television, on the Today Show, for example, they always seem to say, oh, this is so delicious. So
you wanted to know about chefs. What are we looking for in chefs?
Yeah.
A lot of it is personality, because presumably everyone who comes on and is a professional cook, they know how to cook.
Right.
They know what they're doing.
Right.
I mean, so this is not a test of their skills, but it's more, can you be relaxed? Can you be conversational? Can you be a little bit funny? Can you tell me an interesting story? Oh, this is my great aunt Minnie's recipe for coconut cream pie, and we've been eating this in our family since I was a kid.
Right.
And just bring a little something to it, a little zest.
It's hard to cook and measure and and talk too. So not everybody can do that.
Right. And it seems a little counterintuitive, but we're not looking for the chefs to show off their cooking skills. If we get a chef from one of the really fine restaurants in Maine and they come in and make one of their ambitious dishes, that's not what people at home eat.
Right.
This was driven home to me. I pretty much sensed it anyway, but it was driven home to me several years ago when I saw a list of the Food Network's 10 most requested recipes at the end of a year.
Yeah.
And what is it? It was mac and cheese,
Right.
Fried chicken,
Right.
Chicken noodle soup, whatever. It's comfort food. It's basic food. And so there are chefs really talented chefs who don't want to come in and make mac and cheese. And I get that. But that's more what viewers want to see than pheasant under glass with some sort of a reduction sauce, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Pheasant under glass. That's funny.
You don't have pheasant under glass regularly at your home? Neither do I.
No. Although I must say, I'm trying to master the art of doing a prime rib, a bone-in prime rib. For some reason, over the holidays this year, I got really inspired to do that. I have 2 sons in their 20s, and they really like that. So that's kind of my new ambition in life is to become a master prime rib.
Have you been watching YouTube videos or reading books?
Oh,
What
yes,
have
I
you been doing?
did.
All of the above?
I watched, yes, exactly. I actually went back to the joy of cooking that my mother gave me in 1987. So I looked at that recipe, but yeah, I watched a lot of YouTube. And
Nice.
it actually, oh, and I also talked to the meat man at Hannaford too. So I got some advice from him.
Are you reaching the level of excellence that you hope for?
Yeah, I actually am pretty pleased with the way it's come out, and my boys have been pleased too. I mean, they like it just a little more than rare, like not quite medium rare, but yeah, so, but not running in the field either. So yeah, maybe sometime you'll have to come over for one of my prime ribs.
I actually don't eat meat, so
Oh, you know, okay. All right, well, maybe I'll prepare it for you on the show.
Well, you can figure out the vegan prime rib. Give me a call.
Yeah, right. So, is there a book, a podcast, or an app that has helped you in your career and your life, and why?
There is. When I was a freshman in college, I thought, as I headed off to college, that I would very likely want to become a lawyer. And that was a couple of things. Is the summer of 1973, when the Senate Watergate hearings were televised, I was only 13 years old, but I was riveted by them, and I spent a lot of time watching them, geeking out on the Watergate hearings. And of course, they were all lawyers there. The people who were testifying had a lawyer, and the lawyers would joust with the members of the Watergate committee, who were, I believe, all lawyers, or maybe 6 out of 7 were lawyers, whatever. But I thought the lawyers were really interesting. And of course, I'd always been interested in law dramas on TV, Perry Mason, and I'd read books about lawyers and so forth. And I thought that would be really interesting. So I got to college, freshman year, and I read a book that had come out very recently called 1L. And it was a student's account of his first year at Harvard Law School. That year is called 1L, first year of law, 1L. And so he'd written a memoir about it. And I read the book, and I realized how much of the practice of law is not exciting. It's
Right.
not courtroom drama. It's not prosecutorial digging. It's just drudgery.
Yeah,
It's
pressure.
It's going through law books. It's digging through real estate law, tax law, contract law, all that stuff. And it was really interesting. The book was really well done, well written. And I came to the final page, and I closed that book, and I realized I never wanted to be a lawyer after that.
So it inspired you against being a lawyer.
And so it did. And so I think that if I hadn't read that book, I really do think I might have ended up going to law school. But instead, when I got out of college, I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I did end up in journalism, where I did get to write and tell stories and be out and about and talking to people, which is all stuff I loved. So that book was one that kept me from going down the wrong road.
That's good.
And I think it made a major difference in my life. And probably 25, 30 years after I read that book, I interviewed the author on 207. His name is Scott Turow. He writes great crime thrillers.
Oh, yeah.
Presumed Innocent is probably his best known one.
Right.
It's made into a movie. Good movie. Great book.
You tracked him down?
He's
or-
really talented. Well, he had written a new book, and he was promoting the book. And so I got to it was a satellite interview. He wasn't here in person, but I got to do a satellite interview with him.
And you
I
told
told him
him
that story.
He must have loved it.
And he did. He liked it. He said, I think it worked out pretty well for both of us. And I
Yeah.
said, you are absolutely correct.
Wow, that's really a great story. I love that.
I'm grateful to him because
I think you're the first one of my guests who ever referred back to something that they had read, so long ago, as opposed to usually people talk about something they just read last week or recently. So I like that.
Yeah, that it really, I think it truly did alter the course of my life.
Yeah, I
a
have to
positive
confess,
way.
I thought I wanted to be an attorney also, but then I learned what was involved with law school and all of that boring reading, and I just don't think I could have sat still for long enough.
Yeah,
to
it's
do all
not
that.
Perry Mason. And I foolishly thought it was.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I was grateful my dad told me that he thought I had what it took to be a good PR person, because he was an electrical engineer for Westinghouse Electric Corporation. He knew the corporate PR people there, and he thought I had a lot in common with them. So he arranged for me to job shadow in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with the PR staff there. And that's when I said, oh, yes, this is definitely what I want to do.
I think Westinghouse owned a TV station in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think they did too.
Had you gone down that path, maybe our roles would be reversed. You'd be the reporter, and I would be the PR person talking to you.
That would be something. Yeah, that I could be, well, I was going to say that I could be mean to you, but you've never been mean to me. There are some journalists who have been mean to me, however, especially when I was younger, and probably I was pestering them, but
well, sometimes the relationship can be a little confrontational. I don't think I've ever had a nasty spat with a PR person, but sometimes we annoy you and you annoy us.
Right? Yeah,
that's life.
Yeah, you have to be thick skin. Well, Rob, this has been a lot of fun. Tell us how people can get in touch with you if they have story ideas about real stories.
As you know, given my technological preference, carrier pigeon is a great way to get in touch with me. No, email is a terrific way. You can just send it to rob.caldwell@newcentermaine.com.
Right.
And I'll take a look.
Or send him a letter in the mail.
Or handwritten notes.
1 Congress Square, Portland,
Handwritten
Maine.
notes are how you break through the clutter, as we have established.
Right. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Nancy.
It's great.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the PR Maven podcast. I invite you to share a review of the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation on Facebook. It's free to join, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you use an Alexa device, use your Alexa app to search the Skills and Games section to find and enable the PR Maven podcast flash briefing. This will give you access to exclusive content and more PR and marketing advice. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.